Oh man, packed house. All right, time to cheat. Let's do it. Morning, everybody. Austin, Ronald, Callie. How's everybody doing? Get a thumbs up. There we go. Thank you. Oh. Couple more people coming in. Those in class, those on Zoom. We're going to be going from Canvas today, but let's talk about anything other than history. What's your guys' favorite? Guys, type this in. I'll give you participation points today. What's your favorite summer activity? Declan. Sitting behind a fan, nice. You ever spray the spray water through it or whatever, make a little mist system? Yeah, that's true. Fair enough. You say what? You like to do nothing? Everything. Gotcha. The opposite. Yeah, I'm more of a sit and do nothing when I can type of guy. Swimming, a lot of swimming answers. Swimming. Everybody putting some hockey in the summer. Chris, where do you play hockey at? Minnesota. All right. There we go. I'm sure they got a lot of places. Tariq, what about you? Yeah, especially playing outside. It's you got to take advantage of it when you can. In Indiana, I grew up in Ohio, same exact way. All right. Let's see. Go ahead and get going here. All right. Honesty time. Who yesterday logged into Canvas? Let's start there. Who logged into Canvas at all? Okay. Did you guys watch any of the documentary? No. No. That's what I assume on everybody. All right. I see that hand raised. Does that mean you logged into Canvas, or does that mean you watched the who watched the documentary? Okay. 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 All right. So do me a favor. If you did, send me a little like message that says yes or me or whatever, just so I know. I see a couple of you guys did. All right. But just make sure that you type in a message there. All right. So I'll build a little context before we start the rest of this documentary. That's fine. Yeah, you're not supposed to finish. Just the first half hour. And then that should be about the first 20 questions or 21 questions, whatever I said. So if you did 1 through 20, let me know. But beyond that, let's see. Ben, Taylor, Ronald, do you watch like the first half hour though? Gabby. Yes. You guys did much better than the first class. All right. Well, still the vast majority of you didn't. So what we're gonna do, if you are one of the people that messaged me already and watched the first half hour, you can log off for the day. If not, we're going to watch the first half hour of the video because so many people didn't. So first things first. Modules, in person and Zoom people both. Modules go down to week 6, and then this asynchronous Tuesday. And then this is a little video to build context that I made. What you're going to do, though, is download this French Revolution video guide if you have not yet. We're going to get to about here today, I hope, 20-ish, I hope. And we're just going to watch this because I assume most of you didn't, especially based on the first period. All right, so everybody in here got that out?
As we approach July, mid-July, is that the king is gathering his forces to disperse them to...
Shut up. All right. If you sent me a message already, like I said, have a good day. If not, we are going to go ahead and get started. Make sure to have this document out. I'm going to be stopping every 10 or so minutes and then going over what the answers are. Does anybody have any questions or anything before we get started?
What message do we send you?
Oh, did you watch, is this Austin?
Yeah. Were we supposed to do this yesterday for homework? I did this.
Yeah, did you watch the first half hour?
Yeah.
Did you do the 20 questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can log out. Yeah, you can log off for the day.
Okay.
All right, let's get going.
One man would rise to inspire the nation, to cast aside a reluctant king and a hated queen. And a new republic would be born in blood, the blood of the French Revolution. (1794), France's Conciergerie prison, an impenetrable fortress on the banks of the Seine River. Dank, rat-infested, it is known as Death's Antechamber. Inside, the voice of a young nation is about to be silenced. As his hair is shorn and his neck laid bare for the blade of the guillotine, Maximilien Robespierre prepares to pay for the cataclysm left in his wake. The explosion of events that became the French Revolution.
The French Revolution is this extraordinary moment when people began to believe that you could actually recreate almost everything in a society, that you could not only change the politics, the institutions, but you could change human nature itself through political action.
The French Revolution really does constitute the crossroads of the modern world where everything begins to turn in a different direction.
The revolution saw a feudal land turn its back on aristocratic tradition and chart a violent new course for the future. It would shake the very foundation of Europe, and its impact would be felt across the seas.
The French Revolution is the most important event in Western history. There are developments that can rival it, like the Industrial Revolution, like capitalism, but if you mean an event, I can't think of anything more important.
It was the revolution that upset things the most. I mean, again, when you consider that it got rid of the Catholic Church, it got rid of Christianity, it got rid of the nobility, it got rid of the king, it got rid of all these things.
The French Revolution would bring bread to the poor, democracy to France, and would establish a whole new order of society. But progress would come at a price.
It was really a moment of extraordinary hope, extraordinary ambition, and then it turned into this most horrific tragedy.
Now, broken and defeated, Robespierre, not 2 days before, stood atop his world, presiding over the greatest and bloodiest revolution Europe had ever known. So true to its ideals, he was called the Incorruptible. So powerful, his slightest utterance could cloak an entire city in fear. A master orator, Robespierre's words were his weapon. Now, silenced by a bullet to the jaw, he awaits the same swift and brutal end he has brought down upon so many others. The revolution is about to eat its own. No one could have foreseen the turbulent times ahead on one spring day in 1770. The Chateau of Versailles fills to its gilded rafters with the glittering crowds of the royal court. Completed in 1682, Versailles was the crowning masterpiece of King Louis XIV. To put some distance between himself and his subjects, Louis XIV transplanted the capital of France to this small town 12 miles west of Paris, where he had built the most magnificent palace in all of Europe. For nearly 100 years, it has been the seat of the nation's unwavering monarchy. And today, it is host to a very important wedding. King Louis XV's grandson, Prince Louis Capet, next in line for the throne, is about to take a bride. Just 15 years old on the eve of his wedding, Louis Capet is bashful and hesitant, with few of the characteristics expected of a future king, much less a husband.
Louis was this pudgy, shy, painfully inadequate 15-year-old with absolutely no social graces at all. Louis XV's mistress, Madame du Barry, called him a fat, ill-bred boy. Basically, he was just a schlub.
It was very hard for Louis to come to decisions. He dithered incessantly. He was always ready to be persuaded by the last person he had talked to. Again, those are usually not considered good leadership qualities.
Louis.
All right, let's touch base with the first 5, I believe we got through. So, number 1, what would the French Revolution bring to the poor? This is going to be a recurring theme. Declan. Food. Specifically what? Yeah, somebody said it.
Bread.
Bread, thank you. Absolutely. Bread's going to be a recurring theme here. Bread, because as we'll see in a little bit, that's most of what these people ate was just bread. So when they don't get bread and they're heavily taxed, a lot of places are heavily taxed, but when you're also starving on top of it, that's when revolutions happen. That's when unrest happens and people want the system to change. So that is the context, the background here. Number 2, what was Robespierre called? 3. Incorruptible, absolutely. So incorruptible for number 2 is going to be ironic later on because Robespierre is going to be a figure through this entire documentary. He's going to be a leader of the French Revolution the entire time. And he eventually, their side, if you want to look at it like that, is going to end up doing a lot of the things that they themselves, at this point in history, at this point in the documentary, would be considered corrupt. All right, number 3, what was Robespierre's weapon? Somebody on Zoom. What was he known for? Yeah, I wanted somebody on Zoom. Tariq. Words were his weapon. Very good orator, very good speaker. He comes from the nobility. Well, he actually comes from the peasantry and then works himself up through scholarship, becomes a lawyer for the poor. But yeah, he speaks a lot of what the commoners' beliefs and feelings on the time were. So leading into Louis Capet, who would be Louis XVI, the king, future king. How old was he on the eve of his wedding?
15.
15, thank you. Rihanna, thank you as well in the chat. 15 years old, so just a kid, getting married off for political reasons to a country that France didn't get along with, Austria, to essentially improve that relationship between those two countries. And what was Louis like? Good leader, strong, confident. What are some words to describe him?
Shy, pudgy.
Shy, pudgy, bashful. Ill-bred boy was my personal favorite. No social skills. So yeah, as the historian just mentioned, not really great qualities for a leader. All right, let's keep going.
His marriage is a political union between Austria's royal family, the Habsburgs, and his own, the Bourbons. The wedding symbolizes the end of an ancient rivalry and the beginning of new regional ties. The young bride-to-be arrives in France, a wide-eyed and pretty 14-year-old girl, Marie Antoinette.
Marie Antoinette is an Archduchess of Austria. She's the youngest daughter of the Empress Maria Theresa, and she comes to France as part of a marriage deal which represents a great reversal of alliances, whereby for the first time in living memory, France and Austria become allies rather than enemies.
Marie comes to France as a political gesture, but as a teenager, she has little interest in political affairs.
Well, when Marie Antoinette came to Versailles, she was very young. She didn't know a great deal about the country she was coming to. She didn't know about the customs. She didn't know about the court. She was certainly a headstrong girl, a very lively girl, but she was still a girl.
When Marie Antoinette comes to Versailles, she is just a teenager. She is blonde with blue eyes. She is pretty, and she likes being attractive to people. And she comes with the intention of winning over her husband and her new family.
On the night of the wedding, there is an ominous storm. But inside, the grandeur of the ceremony lights up the palace as the newlyweds make their way to the royal bedroom. In an age-old ceremony to encourage the conception of an heir, the king's courtiers are present as the awkward young couple is revealed in the marriage bed for the first time. The crowd is delighted and expectations are high. But once the curtains are drawn, it's clear that an heir will not be so easily produced.
Louis was not only not interested in ruling, Louis wasn't particularly interested in loving either, and he paid her no attention on the first nights or even further into their marriage.
Many years will pass before the marriage is finally consummated. The lack of an heir will soon spark gossip all across the kingdom that will continue to plague the couple for years to come. The grand wedding gala continues for days. But outside the gates of Versailles, there is hardly cause for celebration. Years of mismanagement by the monarchy have left the French people deprived and hungry. Nearly a decade earlier, King Louis XV lost the 7 Years' War, battling Great Britain over territory in North America. The ill-fated conflict all but bankrupted France of money and prestige, leaving the country's coffers drained, even as its population is growing bigger every day. With diseases like the plague a distant memory, fewer people are dying, but more and more of them are hungry.
France grew from 20 million to 26 million in the 18th century after having grown only 1 million in the preceding 2 centuries. That put tremendous strain on what was there, and so there was a lot of anxiety.
4 years after the royal wedding, Prince Louis's grandfather loses his final battle with smallpox. Louis XV dies a defeated and unpopular king and leaves behind a country on the brink of chaos. In a lavish ceremony, young Prince Louis inherits the throne and is crowned King Louis XVI. Despite his insistence on a grandiose coronation, Louis is all too aware that he is woefully unprepared for the job.
Louis XVI, the moment his grandfather dies and it suddenly is clear that he's king, he doesn't know what to do. He feels as if the world is falling in upon him. So although he's been educated in the full expectation of becoming king, he doesn't feel ready for it.
For a kingdom in crisis, Louis XVI is the worst man to have on the watch. The 20-year-old king prays, "Protect us, Lord, for we reign too young." Ensconced in their royal apartments in Versailles, Louis and Marie begin their promising new lives as young monarchs, while only 12 miles away in the city of Paris, another new era is dawning, one that is on a collision course with the monarchy itself. It is a dangerous new age of ideas, the age of enlightenment.
All right, so as we covered last week, Age of Enlightenment has a huge effect on these situations, on these things that are about to go down. A lot of the ideas would not have been in these people's heads without the thoughts and thinkers that we covered last week. So let's get back to the video guide number 6. Where was Louis's bride from? I think we covered it already, but Declan? Austria. Yep, thank you. Good. I see those messages. Thank you. Austria, Vienna, Austria. Like I said, an enemy of France for a very long time between the Habsburgs and the Bourbon dynasties. This was a political wedding that they were forced to get married at a very young age. Speaking of which, number 7, how old was Marie Antoinette on her wedding day?
14.
14, thank you. Yeah, 14 years old, also pretty much a child. Number 8, what was the neglect of the French monarch? What has the neglect of the French monarchy left the French people?
Hungry.
Starving, poor, hungry, absolutely, yeah. Their decadence, their choice in activities and luxury is something that has left everyone a bit of, a bit on the upset side, to say the least. They have not been able to eat bread or really survive, and yet these guys, Marie Antoinette, everybody is living it up as a king, as a queen. What is next here? Number 9, what is growing bigger every day? Yeah. Population of France. Another answer. Yeah, this isn't what they said in the video, but the deficit is a good answer as well, because France is out of money due to war, due to the royals' spending habits as well. So that's actually not a bad answer either. And then we just covered this. How old was Louis when he became king?
20.
20 years old. Ill-equipped boy becoming king at 20 isn't going to go very well. All right, let's keep going.
As the royal carriage approaches the esteemed Louis le Grand College, crowds gather for a glimpse of grandeur. It is the day to welcome the newly crowned king, Louis XVI, and his lovely Austrian wife to the city of Paris. And at the head of the welcome party is a promising young law student, Maximilien Robespierre.
When Robespierre was a schoolboy, the king visited the college and Robespierre gave a Latin address to the king. So he actually spoke to Louis XVI when he was a teenager.
As Robespierre respectfully delivers his Latin soliloquy, the king hardly notices the boy. But years later, their fates will again intertwine under very different, much darker circumstances.
It was one of these rituals that take place in every school, and yet, of course, it was so charged with irony, because here you had the young Robespierre reading this discourse in honor of the man he would later kill.
For now, the welcome is warm and the flattery sincere. The visit from the royals may have won the hearts of the people, but their minds are leaning increasingly in an entirely different direction. Since the Middle Ages, European society had been broken into 3 distinct classes, dictated by birth: there was a great divide between the wealth of the nobility and the clergy and the poverty of the peasants. Then, at the blossoming of the 18th century, reason and science began to challenge this age-old tradition. Swept up on a current of innovation and new literature, Paris now radiates as the philosophical center of the world. The city pulses with a great flourishing of knowledge, a shining beacon of possibility. It is the age of enlightenment.
The Enlightenment is a movement which says don't trust authority, don't trust anything that you've been told by anybody else at all. Think it out for yourself, test it for yourself.
In old regime Europe, you were told what to think. You were given information from above by your rulers, by your priests. And so the idea that you could map out all of human knowledge and then have access to it was revolutionary.
In elite salons across Paris, aristocrats gathered to discuss Enlightenment authors and the burgeoning age of reason. Voltaire, Rousseau, fresh voices who champion liberty, control of one's own destiny, and above all, equality. The passion for this new literature is highest among the upper class, but as Enlightenment ideas take root at all levels of society, the drive for equality will begin to threaten the aristocratic way of life.
What makes it dangerous is it means you will eventually question, why are aristocrats the ones with privilege? Can't we change the world to make it a better place? Isn't progress possible? All of that will eventually undermine the idea that monarchy is natural, aristocracy is natural, and hierarchy is natural.
To see Enlightenment ideals in action, one need only look across the Atlantic, where the Americans are fighting for freedom from France's old nemesis, Great Britain. Young King Louis wants revenge for his grandfather's defeats, and he sees an opportunity in the American War of Independence. Louis commits to the cause a total of 2,000 million livres, enough to feed and house 7 million French citizens for a year. His investment would mark the beginning of financial collapse for France.
America bankrupts France, in effect, because the debt which the French monarchy incurs in order to fight the American War of Independence turns out to be absolutely crucial in the financial situation of the French monarchy, because the French monarchy cannot pay those debts.
While Louis sends money and troops across the Atlantic, Marie is busy incurring debts of her own. Life at Versailles is a never-ending routine of archaic ritual and formality. There are ceremonies for the waking of the king and queen, for dressing, for dining, for retiring to bed. To keep herself amused amidst the ritual drudgery, Marie Antoinette presides over a parade of increasingly outrageous fashions.
Marie was obsessed with fashion, especially these towering hairdos that were several feet high, that took hours and hours in the construction and fit all sorts of ornaments and fruits, and to many people they seemed like an obscenity. They came to represent what was all that was wrong with her and with Versailles and that culture.
Marie occupies herself with court gossip, gambling, and the staging of plays. As her expenses accumulate, Marie earns the nickname Madame Deficit.
Marie is given the name Madame Deficit as the country is in economic chaos, and she continues to spend as if nothing's happened on dresses and jewels and shoes, and she was the Imelda Marcos of her day.
Of all the debts Marie incurs, the greatest is what she owes her country, an heir to the throne. In the 7 years since their marriage, Louis and Marie have yet to produce a child. Marie finds herself in an increasingly humiliating position.
The job of the Queen is to produce a male heir. It's absolutely essential for there to be a son. And during that time, people criticize, people are dissatisfied, people say the king should never have married this Austrian archduchess, and now she can't even produce an heir to the throne.
Marie is desperate. Louis's appetite for food is unquestioned, but sex is clearly not on the menu.
Il y a toute une correspondance entre l'ambassadeur d'Autriche et
Marie-Thérèse, the mother of Marie Antoinette, questioned, if a girl as gorgeous as my daughter cannot get him going, then what is going on?
Qu'est-ce qui se passe?
Louis XVI and his young wife were not able to conceive for 7 years. This cast a pall on the beginning of his reign, and because his hobby as a locksmith was well known, there were all sorts of salacious songs circulating to the effect that the locksmith was having a hard time finding the keyhole.
Louis's disinterest in sex is seen as a lack of bravado as a king. Finally, after years of frustration and pressure from the court, Louis is diagnosed with a treatable condition called phimosis.
Louis had a deformity that made arousal extremely painful. Therefore, there was no consummation until there was a surgical procedure that could correct this. But he was scared to death to have it. And it took years for him to agree to have it. And when he finally did, voila.
After a simple surgery, the couple is able to have their first child, Marie-Thérèse. But there is no easy fix for the years of damage to Marie's image. Since the early 1780s, libelles have circulated throughout the country, pornographic satire of the king and queen. Obscene pamphlets mock Louis's impotence and portray Marie as a promiscuous harlot in a debauched and decadent court. The people's view of the monarchy sours as conditions in the countryside worsen. After a succession of bad harvests, deregulation has raised the cost of flour, leading to a shortage of the very heart of the French diet, bread. But the hardships naturally stop at the gates of Versailles. As the royals continue to live in extravagance, complaints are committed to paper. One charge is leveled directly at the royal court.
Do you know why there are so many needy people? It is because your luxurious existence devours in one day the substance of 1,000 men.
The man behind this charge? The same young man who just a few years earlier regaled the king and queen after their coronation, Maximilien Robespierre. In Robespierre, the people will soon gain a voice, calling for liberty, equality, for revolution. Versailles in the late 1700s is an oasis of extravagance, surrounded by a land in despair. And with an uncertain king at the helm, France is charting a course for disaster. After 19 years of marriage, Louis has sired 4 children. Yet as a king, he remains impotent. In an attempt to demonstrate leadership, Louis dabbles in financial reforms. But his misguided interfering burdens the poor with heavy taxes, while the nobility pay hardly at all. With the economy in ruins and the people restless, it seems as if even the heavens are angry, smiting France with the most bitterly cold winter in 90 years.
If ever God intervened to make a situation worse, the summer of 1788 and the spring of 1789 is a moment when that happens. By the summer of 1788, you already have a burgeoning political crisis, and it's developing against a background of very serious food shortage.
For the people of France in the 18th century, flour is the essence of life itself. Bread, the measure of existence.
Most ordinary people in France ate at least 2 pounds a day of bread. Bread was all important. Its price was immediately felt by everyone. If the price doubled, you were in big trouble.
Under Louis's financial mismanagement, the cost of flour skyrockets. Sparse food supplies are hoarded. And the cost of a loaf of bread soon equals a month's earnings. Hunger turns to rage. Riots break out across France. Homes are robbed. Bakeries are raided, and shopkeepers suspected of stockpiling bread are lynched on the spot. With the economy.
All right. Where did we leave off? 11? Is that right? Yeah. All right. So yeah, get used to in this video lynching and killing and blood and violence, because that's like the very beginning of it, and it keeps up quite a bit. The French Revolution compared to the American Revolution is like the American Revolution is like a G-rated Disney movie compared to this. Like it's insane how crazy this gets and how violent and animalistic people get. And it all does start with bread and taxes, for that matter. But that is the very beginning here of the mass violence. So number 11, what above all did Rousseau and Voltaire champion? Equality. Very good. Yeah, they also mentioned liberty and control of one's destiny, which are going to be themes that come back, but equality above all else. Yeah. Number 12, how much French money did Louis give the American Revolution? Samaya, good. Yeah, 2,000 million in French money. I think it's called livres, but 2,000 million, I believe, is 2 billion. So a lot of money went to the French or the American Revolution. So that combined with a couple other wars happening simultaneously completely bankrupted France. Meanwhile, even though they're bankrupt, what was Marie obsessed with?
Fashion.
Fashion. Very good. Yeah, fashion, because that's what she was. She was a princess. She was royalty. She was a queen. That was her thing. She lived in court life being this like very high-end, bougie way of life that didn't see eye to eye with the common people. And that's what started to make people upset. All right, what is the job of the queen that she was not doing? Declan. To have a male heir, absolutely, very good. Thank you, Rihanna. Yeah, to produce a male heir. Louis was not interested in producing much of anything. So she was not doing her job in the eyes of the people. That certainly didn't help the process of this either at all. Number 15, how much bread did the average person eat per day? 2 pounds, lots of bread. So when that goes away, people get upset. How much did a loaf of bread soon cost? Yes, a month's earnings. All right. Yeah, very good. So we're starting to see where this is headed and starting to put together. People are starting to get the idea that they can have some power as a mob.
Economy in shambles, the banks force Louis to hire a finance minister, Jacques Necker. An enlightened thinker, Necker is popular with the people in a way that Louis can only envy.
Jacques Necker was undoubtedly the most popular minister throughout the spring of '89 because he's taken the line publicly in his writings that the government's duty is to make sure that there is enough bread and grain for everybody.
The nation in fiscal crisis, Necker urges Louis to call a meeting of the traditional representative body of the kingdom, the Estates General. It is the first time the representatives have been called together in 175 years.
France was politically organized in something called the estates. The first estate was the clergy, the second estate was the nobility, and the third estate was everyone else. And by contemporary reckoning, the first two estates occupied 3% of the population, and the third estate 97% of the population.
A lot of people felt it was very unfair for this third estate, which was most of the population, to only have 1/3 of the deputies. They felt it was very unfair that this should be a three-chamber parliament, where two chambers, the nobility and the clergy, could always outvote the commoners.
May 4th, 1789. A skilled young lawyer and politician arrives at Versailles. Maximilien Robespierre comes to stand before the Estates General as a deputy to fight for a fair voice for the people he represents, the Third Estate. An orphan from the provinces, Robespierre had risen to academic prominence on a prestigious scholarship, becoming an eloquent speaker, prim in appearance, with never a hair nor a phrase out of place. Back home in the small town of Arras, the Enlightenment ideas he had absorbed in the salons of Paris found a powerful voice as he became a hometown lawyer for the downtrodden.
By the time he went back and started to practice as a lawyer, he was reading very widely in the Enlightenment. And Robespierre was someone who, when he was practicing law in Arras, tried to actually bring the ideas of the Enlightenment into the cases he was fighting.
At the Estates General, Robespierre and his colleagues are demanding that the nobility and clergy pay taxes. But Louis feels increasingly threatened by the growing radicalism of the Third Estate. Then, on June 20th, after a 6-week deadlock, the deputies arrive to find that they are being silenced.
On June 20th, when the deputies come to their meeting and find the doors locked, they suspect a plot. They move next door to what we call a tennis court, which was really a handball court, and gather together and swear they will not stop meeting until they have a new constitution.
The deputies declare themselves a new National Assembly, the true representatives of the people of France.
The tennis court oath is one of these great symbolic moments in the history of the French Revolution. You had these people assembled in this great open space of the tennis court, raising their arms in this sort of quasi-Roman salute. And for the National Assembly, this was a moment when they realized something of their power and their dignity and saw that they really could defy France's king.
In one revolutionary stand of defiance, the National Assembly is born. It will be a communion of voices from around the country, a parliamentary body enacting the people's will. But wresting power from the king would not be so easy as signing a simple proclamation.
All of these early victories that take place at Versailles are largely paper victories, and they have no teeth to back them up. And the fear that that takes over the deputies at Versailles as we approach mid-July is that the king is gathering his forces to disperse them, to overthrow them.
By early July, 30,000 of the king's troops are taking positions around Paris. To defend themselves, the people form a new National Guard. Rioters raid Paris's armories and make away with over 28,000 muskets. The only thing missing is gunpowder, and the people know just where to get it. In the center of Paris, there looms a massive stone dungeon, notorious as a symbol of feudal rule, the Bastille. The prison houses the city's stores of gunpowder and is legendary as a den of torture and unspeakable deaths.
The Bastille had been the great symbol of royal despotism, the great symbol of the kings of France running beyond the just limits of their own power, a symbol of horror for the people of France.
Amidst the rioting, there is a stunning outrage. Louis fires his finance minister, the people's beloved Jacques Necker, seen as too sympathetic to the masses. Hours after Necker is fired, word reaches Paris that their man on the inside has been ousted. There is nothing left but revolt. On July 14th, crowds band together identifying themselves with a small cockade, red and blue for the colors of Paris, separated by white, the color of the House of Bourbon. The tricolore is born. From the feverish crowd, a voice cries out, "To the Bastille."
Attacking the Bastille means that the people of Paris are saying, you cannot get rid of the new National Assembly. The people are acting, they're arming themselves, and they're basically saying, we take the side of the revolution.
At the sight of the approaching mob, the governor of the Bastille, Bernard de Launay, attempts to lock down the prison. He mounts a hopeless defense, and the marauders storm the fortress and tear into the guards with knives and pikes. Finally, de Launay surrenders, but the enraged mob engulfs him, dragging him through the streets. The jeering horde kicks and stabs at him until he shouts, "Let me die." The crowd eagerly obliges. He is stabbed and shot, and a revolutionary tradition is born. His severed head is paraded on a pike.
The deputies in the National Assembly do not immediately condemn this act of violence. In fact, they accept it. And it was this acceptance of popular violence that, in some people's view, created a pattern that was to have catastrophic consequences for the unfolding of the revolution.
With the smoke still clearing over the Bastille, Louis XVI returns from a hunting trip. In his diary under the date July 14th, 1789, he writes, "Nothing," a reference to his unsuccessful hunt. An aide interrupts and breaks the news of the riots and the fall of the Bastille. Louis XVI asks, "Is it a revolt?" "No, sire," he replies. "It is a revolution."
Well, the last ones we'll do today. Okay, we left off 17, I believe. Number 17, what do Robespierre and the Third Estate demand from the First and Second Estates? Declan. That they pay taxes, yeah. Nobility and clergy both pay taxes. Equal voting, pay taxes. Yeah, adequate food supply, a lot of demands. Tax is the most important one. Number 18, how many of the king's troops had moved into Paris by July, Tariq? 30,000? 30,000, that's right, yeah, thank you. Yeah, and a lot of these troops were foreign troops, like they were French troops, but they were from French colonies, not from France itself. So that made people in France, in Paris, even more nervous by the presence of these guys, because they're not really like their neighbors and their friends and people they knew and were familiar with. They were outsiders, even though they were technically in the French army. 19, what colors are in the tricolor? Red, white, and blue. What did the people do with the head of the governor of the Bastille? Put his head on a spike. Yeah, that's gonna continue to be a theme. Is putting heads on spikes and parading them around. This is where people start to really like lose their minds. I mean, it shows you the power people can have to uproot their systems. And this is where a lot of it starts. A lot of these ideas start is the French Revolution. Number 21. What does Louis XVI write in his diary on July 14th, the same day as the storming of the Bastille? Nothing. And nothing is a reference to his unsuccessful hunt. Not that nothing happened today, but even during the time when the people were taking over the Bastille, a symbol of the beginning or the main part of the French Revolution, it's not even registering in his head. All right, Zoom people, in-person people, intros are due, I believe, tomorrow. So get those done today. If not, we're going to be watching the next half hour tomorrow as well, asynchronous day of the documentary. So just go back to this, watch the next half hour, do the next 20 or so questions. Have a good day.